Good morning, CSAEers. It is August the 10th, 2017, and this is episode 9 of CSAE's Conquering Content. I am Steve Trustrum, CSAE's Manager of Content, and today we're talking about content as value in and of itself. So, what do I mean by that? What I mean is how you can bring value to your audience and your membership, specifically, in and of itself. What can content do that is valuable to the people who you're presenting it to? So this includes social media, blogs, articles, white papers, videos, whatever you're producing in terms of content, and what you should be thinking of in terms of the value it brings, what its worth is to your audience. So why this is important is because a lot of people produce content, a lot of associations, a lot of business produce content solely with the perspective of what that content can do for them. You know, this is pushing our product, this is pushing our agenda, you know, and they just assume that because it's important to them as an organization, that it should be important to their audience as well, because, you know, the audience has their eyes on them. And this is a false assumption. You should be using what is valuable to your audience to lead them what is of value to what is of value to you, and not just assume that because it's important to you, it's important to the people who are watching you. So a big important part of how you create content that is valuable to your audience and brings value to them is you have to know who your audience is. What are the segments? So at CSE, for example, our two primary segments in our audience are association executives and our business members. Now those are the obvious ones because that's how our membership is split. But within those two categories, what do you have? You have influencers, decision makers, CEOs, you have staff, you have volunteers. There's all these different segments which have importance in and of themselves, even when they overlap. So you have, me as the primary content creator here at CSE, I have to be aware of all those different segments when I create content. Now, not everything I produce on behalf of CSAE will target every single one of those segments individually. You know, I'm hoping that there will be something of value for everyone, but usually there is one or more primary segments that I'm focused on with each given content. So if I'm writing something about young professionals, I'm obviously not targeting the demographic that is most likely sitting in the CEO chair positions in associations, those being people who would not be classified as young professionals as a norm. So you have to think of that. What is your end goal with the content? What do you hope it's leading towards? And that helps you decide which audience segments you should be going to. If you're really only targeting one audience segment, you have to be certain that the return you're going to get off of your content is commensurate with the amount of value it's delivering to that particular segment. That segment could be getting lots of value and lots of really great information from you from that content, but if you've cut the edge so sharply that it's a really small target segment that you're aiming that content at, the returns you get might not just be worth the amount of time it put into that content. So it's a balancing act. The value you deliver has to be balanced with the value you're getting back in return to your organization. Otherwise, you're just spending your organization's time on something that's not really worth it. So also at CSE, we have to consider the audience that goes beyond membership. You know, we're not just speaking to our membership, so that's another audience segment that we have to be aware of. And that's not going to go for all associations, all organizations. Some are, say, very specifically restricted because, you know, they are necessarily regionally based. You know, they're very they're limited by the restrictions of their peers. So if it's a trade organization, you know, the information they're giving doesn't really appeal to a wider audience within the association sector necessarily because, you know, they're speaking towards the skill set and, say, the legal restrictions that may be placed on their specific trade. So, you know, there is that framework that's going to vary from one organization to the next, and I'm sure every organization is aware of those restrictions, but just be aware of them as they relate to the content you're outputting and the value you're delivering. Okay, so speaking in very broad terms here. So what are some ways to deliver value to associations, that association can deliver value to their audience while bringing value back in? So a common one is sponsored content. Provide channels that allow you to have a relationship with a sponsor and let that sponsor deliver the value on your behalf. So CSAE has sponsors, but we also have business members. So that's a tricky relationship that we have to juggle, because if someone gets a sponsorship with us, we have to be sure that the content that is outputted on CSAE's behalf doesn't fly in the face of what our business members are doing in relationship with us. We can't say a particular tourism board as a sponsor. We can't just push their content on their behalf through CSAE's channels, because the tourism boards that are our members would not be happy with that for obvious reasons. So you have to be careful with the value you will allow your content channels to deliver to your audience through sponsorship. You have to put a lot of thought into that and do it before you sign your sponsorship deals. So I've heard from some associations anecdotes about relationships and things that have gone through sponsors. And while researching certain topics, I've read stories online about sponsorship and associations, and I've been very surprised some of the things that I've seen, because there wasn't a lot of foresight. And, there's a lot of assumptions, and people taking things for granted when they sign sponsorship deals. And they sign these things saying, by being our sponsor, you give us this and we'll give you that. And what that organization is giving back to the sponsor is something that actually harms their content releases by locking them into certain directions and preventing them from doing content that would deliver value to their audience. So again, when sponsorship is a great way to get content out to your audience, it's a great way to get it from a third-party source, but you have to be very careful what it is, especially before you sign any contracts. Now, another way to look at sponsorship is how you can turn your members into pseudo-sponsors. And by that, I don't mean, getting them to pay more, because then you're not delivering value with your content. You're directly asking them for money. But, look at your content channels as a tool that you can offer to your membership. So, for example, here at CSAE, we really want our business members to have a chance to talk in front of our audience. So we have sent out various mailings saying, we've got this blog that we've been pushing since 2016. We're taking it seriously. We've got a content manager on board. As an opportunity, we would like our business members to come in and talk about their experience with CSAE with other members as it relates to their business and their experience. So it's not allowing them to come in and say, our business is the best, come use our services and our products. It's not allowing them a sales pitch, but it's allowing them access to our audience, the audience that CSAE has created, through our content channels. And by that access and that exposure, they're getting themselves in front of the audience and thereby delivering value to that member as well as to the audience in a relationship that's not as direct as a sales pitch, but still allows that opportunity to make a sale. So you have to think about that, how your value can be delivered to your audience through those channels and to your members as well. So I look at that as a kind of, as I said, a pseudo sponsorship relationship, by just giving your members a chance to have a little bit of added value. And there are other things you can do. CSAE is not able to do this because we have agreements with a sponsor for advertising on the website, but you can do things like if you have members of various businesses in your association, you can do things like add banner ads to your website, and as well as selling it to third parties as a way as an income source to your website and your association. You can do things like, say, as part of your membership, each member gets X amount of impressions for free in banner ads. So that's a way of giving them, again, more exposure through your content channels as an added value. And of course, you're delivering value to the audience by giving them an inroad to what the member offers. So there's things like that. Another way to offer, deliver more value to your audience through your content, is to really know what your audience needs, what they want to hear from you, and what they're looking to know. So we frequently get questions at CSAE about, do you have this? Do you have this resource? Do you have that resource? I have this problem. Can you offer us some advice? So it's actually sometimes more difficult to be dealing directly with a single organization or a single person asking a question, because the answer could be so broad-based that you don't want to get too specific because, it's for you it's advice, but for the member calling up, it's, it has actual implications in their organization. So you don't want to say something that in the broadest terms can be correct, but in their specific terms will be problematic, and then something goes wrong and they call you back and say, why did you tell us this? It kind of left us in a lurch and now we're screwed, and you've upset your membership or you've upset the audience if you take questions from your general audience. So instead of offering that direct advice that could lead you to problems, what you can look at is you take these questions in, you take feedback from your audience and from your membership and beyond, and you use that to drive topics within your content. So if someone calls me up and says, okay, you're the content manager, do you have any templates or tools I can use for this specific purpose within my association? Say a policy form or something like that, which CSAE does offer, but we offer them as templates to be customized. We don't say, here, this is the form, use it as is, this is the only thing you'll ever need. No, we say, take it, adapt it, get it vetted. So someone calls us up and asks for this, and say we get enough calls, we're like 3 people have called in a week asking us about this particular policy. Well, then as a content manager, I would say that obviously there's some interest in that. Let's write an article around it. And instead of continuing to give one-on-one advice that could get the people I'm talking to into trouble, because it's not the specific, it comes across as an answer, like I said, but it's not specific to them, and it's it leaves them in some hot water. Instead of doing that, you can make a general blog entry or article or white paper that comes across as advice, provides citations, resources, and the like, and is more of a guidance piece instead of an answer to a specific question, and that will lead them in the right direction. And of course, it'll open up new ways of thinking for the audience, the general audience, people who didn't call you, but they're like, oh, that's a good question. So that's another thing, is look for feedback from your membership and from your audience and use that to drive future conversations through your content channels. And if you don't get a lot of those types of calls, then or otherwise get direct contact from your membership or your audience where they want to know these things that can drive those topics, then what you can do is poll your audience. Have a running poll that is on a top certain area. What do you want to hear about governance? What are your concerns about the legal regulation changes in our particular section of the association sector? What do you think about what we could be doing more to benefit our membership? That sort of thing. Run polls, use those answers to drive topics that you can then output into content channels, and that's added value. And it's going to be valuable to your audience because they're the ones who are telling you that's what they want to hear directly. It's a direct line into your topic. So it's going to be good information. You just have to be willing to do the research and talk to the people who know so that your articles have the best information possible and you're not just making stuff up to fill your content channels. You really can't go wrong very often if you give your membership and your audience a voice in your content channels. So open it up to third-party contributors. Set guidelines on what people have to do if they want to participate in your content channels, but give them that opportunity. So CSAE, again, we have plenty of contributors. If you look at our blog, not all of them are written by CSAE staff, primarily me. There are guest contributors from various organizations, some of which are members, some of which are not, some of which have an interest in getting in front of our audience, and some of which are just interested in getting exposure with whatever. As long as it's delivering value specific to our audience, the association and not-for-profit sector, CSAE is happy to work with these third-party contributors. And then, for example, for our blog, our guidelines are very simple. It has to be related to associations. Has to be. You can't talk to us about what's good for business when our audience is not-for-profit. There's going to be some overlap where you can switch the two in and out, but for the most part, there's so many significant differences between the corporate sector and the not-for-profit sector that you really do, we require that it be association specific. And then we have our minimum. I say minimum 500, 750 words. I will edit it for you, so I have to be able to edit it. So, you have to be open to that, because I could look at it and say, that's real, your opening paragraph is really offensive. I'm not going to publish that. How about we do this? Okay, because I don't think you realize it would be offensive. Or, it's just, I've had people send me a blog that's just 1,000 words in a single paragraph. I have to be able to edit that because you do not want to read it. And we would really appreciate if they send a picture of the contributor. a little bit of a bio, and we have to be able to put a call to action on it while also allowing the contributor to, put a similar call to action to their services. It's the benefit of them getting the exposure. So there are certain requirements that you have to have in place if you want to allow people outside of your staff and direct volunteer circles, in other words, outside of your realm of direct control, access to your content channels. And of course, everything's outputted by people within your association. You're never going to give people third-party passwords to your blog or to your social media channels. Depending upon the blog software you create, such as WordPress, you can give certain access to long-term contributors. So if you have someone who's frequently giving you blog information, it might be worth it just to allow them to have an author account where they can write directly into the CMS, and then it goes into a queue that you as an administrator working in the association then has to approve. So that's just one way of getting around instead of them emailing you a Word document which you work in and then upload into the CMS yourself. So you also have to be aware of the right content channel for the right type of value. You can't always deliver the same value using content through Twitter as you can through a blog or even through Facebook or something. So Twitter is very good for the flashy statements, for attaching images and videos with power to them, where that's the content, because of course you're limited by the characters, the amount of characters you use. So there's not going to be a long verbose statement made in Twitter. So it has to be sharp, to the point, eye-catching, and that works very well for some messages, but not for others. G+ is kind of a middle road. It allows you hashtags and all that. You can type a lot in it if you want, or you can use it as a delivery vehicle for other types of content as you do with Twitter. But of course the downside is that audiences there tend not to be as big. LinkedIn is great for B2B contacts, but they've really been scaling back on the usability. From a perspective of someone who runs content through there, your analytics access is greatly diminished from what it has been in previous years. You can no longer grab analytics from group posts and the like. You're limited to your company page and announcements there in your updates feed. So it's another one of those things where the value you're delivering to your audience has to be measured with the value you're getting back. And so your metrics you can pull out of LinkedIn is extremely limited these days. And also the ability to expand that audience is increasingly limited as the ability to network throughout LinkedIn becomes more and more reliant upon organic networking through the people who are already participating, as opposed to driving people to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is great for talking to your existing audience, but not for growing your audience or for a general audience. So it's very important you know the limits and the benefits of each of your content channels so that you can best strategize the type of value you can deliver through them and how you're going to go about doing it. So it's not just about the content you're delivering, but how you are delivering it and who you are delivering it to. I would say that that is a pretty good start for how to talk about using content to deliver value to your audience and your membership. There are, of course, a lot of questions and a lot of things I could keep saying, but that's a broad picture that should get you thinking in some new directions. If you have any questions, by all means, email them to me at steven@csae.com, or leave them in the comments beneath this video on whatever content channel you are viewing it at, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If there's things that you would like to see me address in a future Conquering Content episode, same thing, just leave them in the comments or email them to me. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you want to think, what you want to know, what you want to be pondering, how I can help out. If you have any content questions in general, any specific help, again, give me a shout and I'll see what I can do for you. And until next week, this has been episode 9 of CSAE's Conquering Content with me, Steve Trustrum, Manager of Content, and this is Content as Value. We will see you next week, everyone. Have a good weekend.